Attitude is your superpower. How to create incredible life-changing success. Written by Eduardo Clemente. Published by Level Audiobook. Introduction. Have you ever finished a training session or program, walked out of the room or disconnected the online session, and thought, there's still something missing? I have. Those feelings, time and time again, were the initial spark for this book. I took one leadership training, which was a truly amazing experience with immersion in different cultures and countries, as well as with in-room learning sessions. I could see the frameworks and good practices we learned were important, yet I knew that not everyone who studied them would succeed in achieving their goals, even though the tools were widely available and anyone was technically capable of putting them into practice. I kept asking myself what key ingredient was missing for those who weren't seeing the success they wanted. I thought of my own career and life lessons and realized the key factor that allowed me to grow and provided amazing opportunities was not a technical skill. It had nothing to do with how well I applied certain frameworks or best practices. It was my attitude. I realized what an important mindset tool attitude is for everybody, and so I wrote this book to share those insights with you. This book is not a checklist with 172 things you must do to solve all your problems. I have enough of those at work, and I bet you do, too. And that's part of the challenge of today's business world. Most of us started school at 4 or 5 years old, and from the beginning, we had to do tests that measured our math skills, language comprehension, science understanding, and so on. Then we went to college or university or took a specialized training programs focused on technical abilities. Your instructors probably taught you spreadsheets, software, coding, profit and loss statements, or whatever hard skills you need for your job. I studied business management, which, for example, included accounting, so it was all about Excel and formulas. It doesn't stop with graduation either. As you might have discovered as adults, there are countless opportunities to continue learning. You can take leadership trainings, watch video courses, study industry guidelines, and read books and books and books on how to work more efficiently and productively. I know, I've taken, watched, and read so many of them. You end up with long checklists of action steps to do business better. For years, we have been programmed to test well for technical competencies and on memorizing and repeating what was shared with us. When we're done with our official education, we're told that to improve our career prospects, we should continue developing those same skills. So we do, and we believe this is what it takes to be successful in life. To some degree, all the teaching and the endless resources do help, but as I mentioned, I've always felt they miss the most important part. You can know all the hard skills and business concepts, but if you don't have the right attitude, the rest doesn't matter. A great attitude is key to getting ahead at work and in life. You probably figured out by now that the real world is different from school. Once you have a job and you're in the door, the world doesn't care what grade you got in the last semester of coding class, or if you know a specific formula to calculate compound interest, for example, especially as you can Google most of those things today. People look to see what you can bring to the table. They want to know if you'll make the team more or less productive, if you'll collaborate well with colleagues, if you'll be engaged, and if you'll help solve problems. Even if you had a great education, it probably didn't teach you about these invisible things. They're not easy to pinpoint or grade, but they are what people notice. They're the undercurrents you feel at the office. If you want to get ahead at work and in life, you need to pay attention to the invisible things. And from what I've learned throughout my career, they all fall under the category of attitude. Attitude accelerates careers. I started my career as a junior auditor, going into banks where I thought I would be just one amongst many. I thought I was, and hopefully still am, quite intelligent. But so were all my colleagues, and some were even technically better than me when it came to those hard skills. A few early career lessons, which I'll share throughout this book, taught me the value of a great attitude, and I leaned into that hard. Quickly, I was offered opportunities that took me across continents, companies, groups, and experiences. Today, I'm an executive director at a bank that is part of the largest banking group in Africa. I have 4 major areas of the bank and more than 200 people reporting to me. With my colleagues' help, I get to positively impact the finance industry in our country and throughout the continent. Every day, I have the opportunity to do work bigger than myself, and that means everything. My attitude got me here, and that's why I want to share this message with you. Perhaps you think being a bank's executive director sounds boring. Whatever your aspirations are, though, the right attitude can get you there. You can actively improve your life. Maybe you know your attitude is a problem at work. You show up and do your job, but it feels like things aren't clicking. Something's off. You might even be in a negative spiral, productively or psychologically stuck, thinking you're just not good enough, you'll never get ahead, and the world is unfair. Perhaps you feel pretty good about your attitude, but you know there's always room for improvement, and you're curious about what you can tweak to do better. Or maybe you have never even thought about your attitude and the impact it can have on how you feel at work, in your relationships with others, and your potential success. Whatever your current position, you have the opportunity to take action at work and in life. You don't have to just accept your lot. You can actively improve your situation because it all comes down to attitude, and your attitude is not set in stone. Even better, you don't need a million training courses or a year-long MBA to adjust it. You can improve your attitude one pep talk and one step at a time. I promise it won't be that hard. So, how do we tackle this? It's nice to say, have a good attitude, but what does that actually mean, and how do we achieve it? That is what this book answers. It's not a prescriptive, step-by-step guide, and it's definitely not a research paper, but I wrote this book to tackle these questions with you. I hope reading it will feel like being in conversation with a mentor. We don't have the opportunity to sit down face to face, but this is what I'd share if you came to my office asking for advice. In these pages, you'll find a collection of my experiences, thoughts, and views on what's worked for me, and what I believe will work for you. It's a pep talk in all the things they don't teach at school, but I really wish they would. I hope you'll allow me to be your mentor in this way, because I truly believe this can help you create incredible life and career success. Expect to learn, be challenged, and get inspired. In this book, you'll learn that attitude is about how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. It's separate from your personality, and you'll discover why that's a very, very good thing. We discuss this in Chapter 1, and every subsequent chapter is devoted to an element that contributes to a great attitude. These are skills that will help you and that you can work on. You'll see the role confidence plays in a positive attitude, and what to do if you don't feel very confident right now. In turn, confidence creates positivity, which is an essential factor in attitude. Just as negativity can spiral, so can positivity. In these pages, you'll discover how to start putting small, positive ideas into your work, and then watch as they spin back around to you, becoming more positive and even more impactful. You'll learn how a growth mindset is essential to the world we live in today and for adapting to anything that comes along. Adaptation is one, if not the most important skill that will be required in the coming decades, and your attitude plays a key role in becoming more adaptable. Did you know we're currently in the fourth industrial revolution? We'll talk about how attitude can make us successful, despite the crazy rate that changes are happening in this industrial revolution. You'll learn what emotional intelligence is, how it impacts your attitude, and that you can be more like basketball legend Michael Jordan than you probably imagine. You'll learn what happens when you say yes more often than no, and the power of being a problem solver instead of a problem finder. Anyone can find a problem, not everyone can solve them. You'll bring these tools together in figuring out how and when to manage people's expectations of you, so this doesn't all become overwhelming. And you'll also see how these ideas work together to create a drive for excellence that will make you more valuable at work and more connected to its purpose. Most importantly, you'll learn that developing a good attitude is not actually that onerous. It can be confusing, intimidating, or a bit outside your comfort zone, but that's why you have this book as your easy guide through this process. And I will not ask you to do anything extreme. You don't need to. All the ideas in this book can be implemented in baby steps as you adjust to moving beyond your comfort zone. You can step into a better attitude. A bad attitude follows you around like a cloud. Think of those cartoons where the poor little guy is standing looking miserable with the world's smallest cloud directly above him, pouring rain on his head, but all around him is dry and sunshiny. I don't know if your cloud is pouring buckets of rain or just drizzling a little, but either way, this is your personal pep talk on how to grab that cloud and throw it aside so you can finally stand in the sunshine. Or if that feels kind of intimidating, you can slowly sidestep out from under that cloud, and this book will show you different paths and approaches to take. Life should not feel like it's constantly raining on you. Work doesn't need to be a hopeless battle against miserable weather. It should be fulfilling, valuable, and packed with exciting opportunities. And if it does still rain occasionally, you can feel confident stepping back into the sun. Choose the right attitude and the rain won't stop you. So let's start by talking about what attitude is anyway. You probably have a good idea already, but I have a specific definition that might just make you think differently. Part number 1, perception. Have you ever seen the television show House? It's a medical drama featuring Dr. Gregory House, a brilliant, sarcastic, and caustic doctor who specializes in diagnosing weird and complicated medical conditions. He's a genius, and he's horrible to be around. He has no compassion, he's intensely demanding, and he irritates everyone he sees. He thinks he's amazing, and everyone else thinks he's the worst human being to ever walk onto a hospital ward. We're talking about two different views here. There's how House sees himself and how others perceive him. The same is true for you and me, although hopefully others don't think we're like House. It gets interesting when there's a disconnect between how we see ourselves and how others do. I might say I've got a great attitude because I tell it as it is. If someone suggests we do an impossible task in 3 days, I'll say we can't. It's impossible. And I believe I'm doing something great, as I'm helping us be realistic. However, they might think I'm just a negative old naysayer who just keeps shutting them down, or someone not willing to think differently to find innovative solutions. Same situation, different perception. That's what attitude is all about. This is different from intelligence. No one can say House isn't smart, or rather, they could, but it wouldn't change the fact that he is incredibly clever. His intelligence doesn't change just because someone says he's dumb. With attitude, though, it does matter what others think, and that's incredibly important because you have to work with others. Intelligence is an internal characteristic, and you have it or you don't. Attitude, on the other hand, is an external characteristic, which is all about how you end up being perceived by others. Working well with others. If you're not working alone, you need to work with and through other people. And let's face it, no one works alone, even if you're working from home or in an empty office. You still interact with clients, co-workers, or contractors. Although it might feel like it at times, you don't do everything yourself, so you need to work well with others. It's human nature to react better to people you relate to, feel comfortable with, or respect. There are many studies and literature that show this, from the importance of creating rapport to the use of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, in creating an unconscious connection between you and others so you can perform better when working with others. We don't need to love, or even like, everyone we work with. We don't need to share the same beliefs and ideas about the world. But it is easier to work with people who we at least find professional, positive, and helpful. In turn, others find it easier to work with us when we are professional, positive, helpful, and willing to work with them. Think about your own experiences. If you have an issue or a problem you need help with, which type of person would you rather go to for help? If people perceive you as someone who always creates problems or says no to every request, they'll stop asking you questions and stop involving you in decision processes. They won't want to engage with you. They'll see you like one of those fighter jets in Star Wars with a deflector shield surrounding you, preventing anything from getting in. After a few hit and misses, they'll stop even trying to get through to you. And if nothing gets through to you, you won't be able to do your job as well. You certainly won't improve at work because you'll miss out on opportunities for feedback and to take on interesting projects. This is about having an attitude that makes people want to engage with you. It's about being part of your workplace, being able to speak with people, and them feeling like they can respond to you honestly, without just saying what they think you want to hear. Being well perceived makes you approachable. It makes people eager to share their problems and ideas with you. That doesn't happen if you act like you're always in battle with a deflector shield up. Being liked isn't the answer. Being liked is about making everybody else happy. When you want to be liked, you care more about others' happiness than your own. You say yes to everything that's asked of you. We end up spoiling our colleagues when we're happy to do their bit for them. We end up supporting and even spoiling them as we try to make them happy. We don't need to be a puppet that does everybody else's wills. It might seem a good idea at first. Do what people ask and they'll love you for it. And sure, that will last for a few months. Then it will quickly fall apart. In time, people stop looking at you as your own person. You become like a weather vane that turns to whichever side the wind is blowing. You can't be trusted to hold your ground, which is especially problematic for senior managers, department heads, and executives. In those roles, companies usually want people who have their own ideas. They want leaders who are honest, excited to put new ideas forward, and even a little disruptive. Leaders have to say no sometimes. It's very hard, I would say even impossible, to be successful at senior levels when you say yes to everything, hoping everyone will like you. Oh, and another thing to remember is that time is a finite resource. So if you say yes to everyone and everything in the hopes of being liked, the odds are good that you will end up failing at some, if not most, of those things, if not from other factors, then simply from lack of time. And of course, that also creates a bad outcome. Some workplaces create a culture where only the yes man or yes woman succeeds, but those are usually not the most successful companies. When you read about places that are doing incredible things, they all say they want dissent. They're looking for disagreement. They want people to share their views and opinions and discuss options because that's where they find value. If you're always saying yes, what value are you adding? Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, and ranked by Forbes magazine as one of the top 2 richest men in the world, is apparently a fan of the Ben Carson quote that says, if he has 2 board members who always agree with each other, he'd only need one of them, as he doesn't need 2 people who think the same in the one room. And it's true, isn't it? If you always agree with others, you don't bring any new or unique value. So saying yes all the time, hoping people will like you for it, just isn't the way to get ahead, because being liked isn't the answer. Be engaged in solving problems. Although Bezos and countless other successful leaders talk about disagreement, it's not about saying no just for the sake of it. Instead, the way to get ahead is to be engaged in solving problems. If a colleague tells you they want to do something you disagree with, you should engage in their problem. Sure, you could be the yes man, giving them the go-ahead or positive reinforcement in an attempt to make them like you. You could also say no and tell them to take a hike because you're that type or realistic person. Or you could try to understand the problem they want to solve. You could start by asking more questions about the issue. You could say, listen, I believe there might more ways to look at this. Let's keep an open mind. I understand your problem and it's great that you are trying to fix this. So let's put our heads together, exchange ideas, and find a solution that works. That's where you create engagement, because the next time that person has a problem, they will look at you as someone they can share things with. This might sound stupid, but this approach will, hopefully, make you seem like a good person, not a nice person, or a fun person, or even someone they want to have a drink with, but a good person they can talk to at work. Someone they can engage with because they perceive that having those engagements with you will add value to them in the end. The 360 exercise. You might think you're the most empathetic person in the world, but if your whole team says you have no empathy, then you have no empathy. If no one sees your empathetic nature, it doesn't exist. So how do you know what others see in you? How can you tell if they think you're a good person, the type of person they want to engage with? You need to ask. If you're already employed, and if you can, you should do a 360 exercise. This is just a way of getting more information about how people perceive you, which is always helpful. Usually, these exercises are run by an outside party, but they can be conducted by your company's human capital team if you're confident they can manage the process confidentially. The person running the exercise sends a questionnaire to the people you work with, your peers, your teams, and those you report to. The questions vary based on your industry, your role, and who writes the questionnaire, but they generally ask about your attitude and behaviors. Do you use feedback as a tool to develop people? Are you always ethical? When you have a deadline, do you still provide guidance in a detailed way? Are you client-centric? Are you good at managing the team? The questions will revolve around the key behaviors for your role and company and how you display them, and people will respond by rating you on a sliding scale from 1 to 10, for example. But the goal isn't to see if you're good or bad. Rather, there's something more interesting going on because you also rate yourself. Then you compare your ratings to those of your colleagues. The real goal is to understand the gaps between how you see yourself and how others perceive you. You're not looking to get the highest score or win the exercise. You're looking for gaps between your rating and that of your colleagues, and you're looking to see how big those gaps are. Let's imagine you're using a rating scale of 1 to 5. On the question of how well you manage your team, you rate yourself a 5, but all your team members score you at 3. That's a 2-point difference. And on a 5-point scale, that's a big gap. That tells you something is wrong. You might think you have many tools for managing people, but you're either not using them or they're not effective. It'll take some digging to discover why the gap exists, but knowing something is wrong is the first vital step. Understand the gaps. Personality tests can help fill in the details. There are countless different versions of personality tests. Some claim to be scientific and well-researched, and others are clearly just for fun. The more famous ones include the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which asks a relentlessly thorough 93 questions, and DISC, which measures dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. I've taken a few different personality tests and think you do have to take them with a pinch of salt. They say your personality shifts with time, your experiences, and your overall happiness, so the results aren't absolute. I also don't think any particular methodology is better than the others, despite what the marketing materials say. All personality tests categorize people, usually into 4 personality types. Some use colors, others use words, but regardless of the categories, the value is in knowing what it means to be mapped in a particular way. If a personality test reports that you have a dominant personality, that likely means you're more goal-oriented than focused on what your colleagues are feeling. You drive the conversation more than others in the room. You have clear goals and you're driven to achieve them. It doesn't matter what that personality type is named or what color or animal or celebrity personality it's assigned. The insights come from understanding what it means to be goal-orientated. The advantage of personality tests is that they usually put these traits into context. For example, they'll ask, when you're under stress, are you more worried about failing to deliver on your task or the well-being of your colleagues? That gives you a very tangible idea to work with. I would think, no, if I'm up against a tough deadline, I'm not going to be concerned about whether my coworker ate a healthy lunch or got enough sleep. I'm going to be thinking about the task at hand. I'm going to focus on doing a good job. A 360 exercise gives you personalized feedback, but it can be ambiguous, as the questions aren't usually tied to specific examples. It can also be subjective, as people respond based on how they feel in the moment. If you made someone mad this morning, they probably won't give you positive feedback this afternoon, even if you usually have a good relationship with them. Personality tests add another piece to the feedback puzzle. They give you more objective insights into how you respond to real workplace challenges. They're a tool for gathering more information, and the more information you have, the more you can understand yourself. When you add these test results to the 360 exercise responses, you can connect the dots between them and see commonalities. This helps you better understand how others perceive you. More information provides more understanding. The first time I understood what my colleagues really thought of me, it didn't come from a nicely organized, constructive 360 exercise or an interesting personality test. It came at an office party with the accounting department of my previous bank. Most accounting teams have end-of-month processes in which you close the books for the month and prepare financial statements. End of month was always a busy time for our team. For a few solid days, we worked long hours and were swamped with work. After months of this, It came time for me to move to another job role, and the team threw me a leaving party. It was at my own party that the women in the team finally admitted something. They said they called the end-of-month processes my time of the month. Apparently, I had a reputation for getting moody and difficult to work with once a month. They'd whisper about it between themselves. "Don't go see Eduardo right now. It's his time of the month." I can't say I loved hearing that, especially at my own leaving party, but when I looked back I could see it was true. I usually like to play around at work, joke, talk to people. In those month-end days, though, I'd sit in my office all day, work on computer files, and not speak to anyone. When people dared approach me, I'd either send them away quickly or deal with their issue without any friendly conversation. I was all business. I thought, I'm stressed. I don't have time. I'm in work mode. I didn't think it was really noticeable, but apparently it was. Face-to-face feedback. I wish the women in the accounting department had said something before I left, when I could have actually done something about it. I suppose they didn't because it's awkward to tell your colleague they're a total pain at the end of every single month. This experience also showed me that if we are leading a team, it's important to create moments in which they can give us feedback, as well as a safe environment for them to do so. Then we can know these things when we can act on them. This is why 360 exercises are fantastic. They're anonymous. Respondents don't include their names, and you never know where the comments came from. Many times, you don't even see individual comments, just average ratings. Face-to-face feedback has its place, though. If you're not getting the insights you wanted, then ask 1 or 2 people you're close to for feedback. Ask, "Can you help me? I've had this feedback on a 360 exercise, and I don't understand it. Why do people think this? What do you think about me? I've done this and got some great, helpful advice." But you have to ask the right people if you want honest answers. Ask someone you have a good relationship with, someone you trust, won't feel pressured to say what you want to hear. Whoever you talk to must be unafraid of giving you real answers. Usually this is a peer, not someone who reports to you. It could be a more senior person who reports to you and who you're close to, but be careful you don't put undue pressure on anyone. Be ready for feedback. Whoever you get your feedback from, you do need to be ready for it. This doesn't work well if you're going to get defensive and just throw the negative responses out of the window. You need to be prepared to think about what you hear and to understand why people might perceive you a certain way. Tell yourself that no matter what's written on those results, you're going to accept it. If you discover your team thinks you have no empathy, first take time to absorb that information. Take it in without reacting. Don't go around the office demanding to know who gave you that feedback. Just think about it. Quietly consider what you might be doing to give the impression you're not empathetic. Then look at the rest of your information. If you're doing this thoroughly, you'll have a lot of feedback to work with. You'll have responses from your team, your peers, your line managers, and personality tests. And usually, there are clear links between them. Take your time, review the details, and find the common threads. Switch your focus from your thoughts to others' perceptions. As you mull all this over, remember that it doesn't really matter what you think. Attitude is about how others perceive you. Someone can think they're the best employee ever because they're quick to point out problems when new ideas are presented, but they are actually perceived as someone negative who shuts down others' ideas. Of course, this works both ways. Sometimes you think you're a great employee, but your colleagues don't agree. Other times, you think you're doing everything wrong, but others still seem to like you. You might not realize you're always available to help people solve problems and they love you for it. Either way, it's important to switch your focus from your thoughts to others' perceptions. That allows you to understand how your attitude is seen by others. Your attitude is not your personality. It's important to understand that your personality has nothing to do with how you relate to other people. Personality is deeper than that. It's formed of everything you feel, value, and believe. Your personality is deeply ingrained and isn't something you can change quickly. It can evolve with time and life experience, but it won't shift overnight or just by reading a book, not even this one. Attitude, though, is separate from personality and much easier to control. You can change your attitude without changing who you are. Think of actors who change characters from movie to movie. When they get on set, they display different attitudes depending on the character they want to portray, but they retain their personality. They can demonstrate whatever attitude is needed for that particular role, but they are still themselves, no matter who they're playing. You can shift the attitude you display from moment to moment, but still remain your true self. You can improve how you react to situations without compromising your belief system or pretending to be something you're not. I can't tell you how to define your personality, and that's not the goal here. There are many methodologies around this, including those personality tests you can take online, but people often break it down to simple questions. Are you more goal-driven or people-driven? Do you follow the rules or get creative? Are you pessimistic or optimistic? With the answers to those questions, we give ourselves labels. I'm a goal-oriented person, or I'm an optimist, we'll say. You can give yourself any label, be any of these things, and still improve your attitude, because your attitude is not your personality. You may be faced with the same situation every day, but how you respond can change based on your mood. If you're stressed, the queue outside a store can make you mad, yet in the same situation, you could actually enjoy the chance to stand in the warm sunshine. Your personality didn't change from one day to the next. You're still the same person with the same beliefs, values, and ideals. You didn't change your personality, but you reacted differently. Your attitude changed. When someone is told they don't have a great attitude, they often respond by saying, "But that's just how I am. I'm very realistic. I'm not always looking for a silver lining. I call it as it is. I won't say the world is pretty and colorful and full of stars because I know it's not." But realistic is related to personality traits such as detail-oriented. A person with this trait can focus on details in a positive way, where they see all the possibilities, or a negative way, where they focus on the potential flaws and things that can go wrong. You can approach the same problems with the same personalities and see wildly different attitudes at play. The no is always guaranteed. I am always me, even when the ladies in the office are avoiding my time of the month moodiness. My attitude towards them changed during those long work days, but my personality stayed strong. Once I realized how I was perceived when I was stressed, I worked to change it. Today, I'm far from perfect, but I do manage my stress a bit better. I try to engage in small talk and stay approachable with all colleagues. Change is possible, but only when you do something. If you don't do anything, nothing will change. This applies to most things in life, but especially to improving your attitude. You might not be able to solve all your workplace issues, but a great attitude can solve many common challenges. And it's not as difficult as you might think. As you'll discover in these pages, once you understand how you're perceived, you can improve your attitude with simple, small steps. It doesn't have to be difficult. Focus on one small goal and then the next, and I'll guide you along throughout this book. The great thing is that all these steps are very low risk. You can try the advice outlined in this book without worry. You won't lose anything in trying to improve your attitude. The opposite is also true, though. No action promises no progress. If you don't contribute to the team, you won't be seen as an essential team member. If you don't show your capabilities, you won't be first in line for a promotion. The no is always guaranteed, but what will you lose in trying? Nothing. Doing nothing will just keep you where you are, and in a fast-paced, fast-changing world with so many new ways of thinking, the risk of doing nothing is tremendous. So if the risk of doing nothing is huge, there is no downside in trying to improve your attitude, and there are several potential gains if it works. What are you waiting for? You might even gain some confidence, which is exactly what we're talking about next. Part number 2: Confidence. When I first became an executive director at my bank, I quickly realized I had to change my management style to adapt to my new reality. I'd been excited about the new challenge, but I didn't realize what I was getting into. Someone said to me that being head of a department, as I was before, was very different from being an executive director. This made sense, but I had no idea what it really meant. I had confidence in myself and knew I could do the new job, but I didn't exactly know what the job was. As Chief Financial Officer, I'd been involved in almost every one of our group's responsibilities. If anyone asked a question about our department, I knew the answer, usually right then and there, and I loved being involved in all the details. As Executive Director for Finance, Data, Operations, IT, and Legal, I suddenly had 5 areas and more than 200 people reporting to me. It was impossible to know exactly what every colleague was working on. After being so used to dealing with details, this was very different. Instead of having all the answers all the time, I now had to say, "I'll check into that and get back to you." I had to start delegating as I couldn't be involved in every area of our focus. I became less operational and more strategic. It was clear my old way of doing things wasn't going to help me succeed in this new role. I had to adapt. Luckily, by this stage of my career, I'd learned to notice when one tactic wasn't working, and I was confident I could make the necessary changes to become a better executive. I just wasn't sure what those changes should be. I looked around for help. I started doing online trainings and reading about neuroscience, leadership, coaching, and social safety. Reading was really training. I was learning to work new muscles in leading people, managing teams, and creating an environment of trust so my colleagues could thrive. The more I read or trained, the more I felt prepared for challenges. That gave me some much-needed confidence as I navigated this new role. This might all sound obvious. Of course it went down this way, but I had to make a conscious effort to change my leadership style and my ways of working into a more productive way for the current situation. So, let's dissect what really happened. I was going through big changes at work and was faced with the reality that I could not keep doing things the same way. I got curious about neuroscience and read and learned and trained on the subject. This led to being better prepared for challenges, more confident, more effective, and generally feeling more positive about work. I'd been through this cycle earlier in my career. This time, when new challenges threatened to rock me, the same process of curiosity, learning, and confidence building helped me yet again. Wherever you are in your career, it will help you too. These are key skills in the school of life. The job is to add value. Although I hadn't exactly known the job description for an executive director, I understood one vital thing. The job was to add value. In fact, that was true for all my job roles and all of yours too. Whatever your job title, this is your job. Adding value is the essential work. People don't like to work with someone who says, "I can't do that. That's not my job." I can't stand when people refuse to help because the task isn't their responsibility. I mean, you have a brain. That brain doesn't stop working at the end of your job description. How do you add value, regardless of whether the situation falls within your area? You speak up, you share ideas, you offer suggestions for solutions. However, the problem for many is that it takes confidence to speak up in big meetings or even in one-on-one conversations. Let's say you work in the operations group at a bank, responsible for processing transfers and making payments. In a meeting, someone else talks about the bank's need to improve its brand image. You could easily say, "I don't know, that's not in my job description. The marketing team can figure that out." But if you allow yourself to be curious and see those opportunities as challenges to put your creativity to the test, you start feeling more confident. That confidence prompts your ingenuity, your mind starts teeming with ideas, and you put them on the table. Yes, within the bank you work in the operations team, but outside of work you are also a client and a consumer, and you know what brand images are attractive to you. So, you see, there is almost always a different angle from which to look at issues and add your personal value. Whether the marketing team uses your suggestions or not, you're now seen as someone who adds value to the company. You're a team player who's willing to think beyond your own area. In this particular case, it's not about being a marketing expert, but mostly about empathy in understanding the issue and sharing your views on it in a constructive way. Many companies complain about silo mentalities. Their employees are just focused on their own silos and on solving their own problems, and this creates big-picture issues. If you trust you can at least talk about ideas, you're actually going to have a hard time sticking within your silo. You'll want to share your thoughts and you'll feel good about offering solutions to other people's problems, as well as being open to having other teams and colleagues contributing to your own issues. Sometimes your ideas will be good and your colleagues will like them. You'll add value across silos. You'll become known as a great shoulder to lean on, an ear to bend, a partner to unite with, and hands to help when action is needed. In a world where companies are fighting the challenges of silo mentality, you are incredibly valuable when you are confident and unafraid to contribute. Don't we all prefer to work with someone like that? We want to be around people who help us solve our problems rather than just point out the issues or create barriers. Start by opening up to learning. Some people are naturally confident. The rest of us are not destined to a lifetime of hiding away, however. We can deliberately grow our confidence. I learned this from Heather E. McGowan and Chris Shipley, authors of The Adaptation Advantage, Let Go, Learn Fast, and Thrive in the Future of Work. Their book discusses the idea that when you open yourself up to learning and discovering new things, you find you can talk about new subjects. Without you even realizing it, this makes you more confident. I once went to a training in which the presenter mentioned CRISPR, a technology that can manipulate genes and which scientists hope could help make adults disease-free, or even change babies' DNA so they can't get certain diseases later in life. Theoretically, it could also be used to ensure a baby has blue eyes or will grow to 7 feet tall and be an incredible basketball player. There are clearly a lot of ethical issues involved in that type of gene manipulation. Although it had nothing to do with my job or the reason I attended the training session, I thought CRISPR was the most fascinating discussion of that day. I wanted to learn more about it. I went home and watched a few documentaries on gene editing. I read some books on the subject and continued to find the whole thing interesting. CRISPR was said to be one of the technologies likely to have the biggest impact on the world in the next 10 years. I was curious and wanted to learn more. What else would influence the world in the not-too-distant future? Nanotechnology, apparently. There are tiny nanorobots that can revolutionize industries in ways as varied as conducting maintenance on planes or being injected into the human body to clear blockages in arteries. It sounds like science fiction, but people are already testing this technology. That's amazing! I went down this rabbit hole of reading about emerging technologies, and most of them had nothing to do with my work as the executive director of a bank. I don't think nanorobotics or genetics will change the future of banking, not directly at least. Yet I was curious about these subjects. The rabbit hole led me to read about neuroscience, which taught me about the chemicals in the brain and how they work. The human brain is pretty cool. The neuroscience books I read also talked about the importance of exercise, eating, and sleeping well. That last part didn't really grab my attention as much, although I now understand better the importance of all those components in productivity. But the ideas got me thinking about productivity, so I started learning about that. I grabbed a famous book on the subject. I won't mention its name, but it had great reviews, and I was curious about what I'd learn. About a third of the way in, I couldn't do it anymore. The book just wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. It was checklist-driven, naming 20 or so things you must do to achieve any one thing, and it was very organized. I am not very organized. I quit reading it. And that is okay. Sometimes you start learning about a subject and love it, but it doesn't get you anywhere other than adding knowledge. Other times, you get curious but quickly discover a new subject just isn't your thing. Following your curiosity is still valuable. Curiosity creates confidence. In learning about genetics and nanorobots and brain chemistry and productivity, I discovered that I am capable of learning anything. Perhaps I won't be able to create my own tiny robots that cure diseases, but I have proved to myself that I have the ability to learn. Then, when I'm faced with challenges at work or in life, I feel confident I can learn enough to meet that challenge. That confidence makes me feel more positive about the situation. I don't believe we all need to be specialists. I'm a proud generalist. I like knowing about several different things without feeling the need to have a PhD in any of them. I feel that such a broad set of knowledge helps me understanding the world and other people's views better, and also helps with reinforcing trust that I can relate to most subjects or conversation I'll be faced with. Sometimes following your curiosity will prove useful in a more direct way. I recently started reading about blockchain, which is a peer-to-peer, decentralized, distributed ledger that records transactions efficiently and in the neuroscience books I read also talked about the importance of exercise, eating, and sleeping well. That last part didn't really grab my attention as much, although I now understand better the importance of all those components in productivity. But the ideas got me thinking about productivity, so I started learning about that. I grabbed a famous book on the subject. I won't mention its name, but it had great reviews, and I was curious about what I'd learn. About a third of the way in, I couldn't do it anymore. The book just wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. It was checklist-driven, naming 20 or so things you must do to achieve any one thing, and it was very organized. I am not very organized. I quit reading it. And that is okay. Sometimes you start learning about a subject and love it, but it doesn't get you anywhere other than adding knowledge. Other times you get curious, but quickly discover a new subject just isn't your thing. Following your curiosity is still valuable. Curiosity creates confidence. In learning about genetics and nanorobots and brain chemistry and productivity, I discovered that I am capable of learning anything. Perhaps I won't be able to create my own tiny robots that cure diseases, but I have proved to myself that I have the ability to learn. Then when I'm faced with challenges at work or in life, I feel confident I can learn enough to meet that challenge. That confidence makes me feel more positive about the situation. I don't believe we all need to be specialists. I'm a proud generalist. I like knowing about several different things without feeling the need to have a PhD in any of them. I feel that such a broad set of knowledge helps me understanding the world and other people's views better, and also helps with reinforcing trust that I can relate to most subjects or conversation I'll be faced with. Sometimes following your curiosity will prove useful in a more direct way. I recently started reading about blockchain, which is a peer-to-peer, decentralized, distributed ledger that records transactions efficiently and in a verifiable and robust fashion. Amongst other uses, it's the basis for cryptocurrency, a digital form of payment. As someone in the banking industry, you can imagine why I find digital currencies and the potential of blockchain fascinating. I was interested in reading about blockchain not just for work purposes, but because I was genuinely into it. I don't code, and I don't have any of those technical skills, but I think it's so cool that people can create these complicated technologies and make them useful. Then, in a meeting with my group at work, someone presented some potential blockchain projects. "Wow," I said. "Tell me more about this. Let's find a way of using that technology here." Perhaps that sounds like a reasonable response for someone in banking to be interested in technology that enables a new currency. However, cryptocurrency involves managing finances without traditional banks. It would be easy to think, my gosh, this technology will automate a lot of finance procedures. It could put my job at risk. I don't want to bring this into our company so quickly. Maybe we should leave this until, I don't know, after I'm retired. But curiosity had led me to learn a little about this subject already. It meant that when the subject was raised in that meeting with my group, I was confident in our ability to do interesting things with blockchain and the potential it has to allow banks to do amazing things for their clients. I didn't have all the answers or know how those projects would look. I still don't know, but I'm confident we can figure it out, and I definitely want to be part of that process. Small gains in confidence. Accumulate. You don't need to become completely confident tomorrow. Small gains in confidence accumulate. And small gains can be made in small steps. It's like a computer game. You try one new thing, it works, you win some gold coins, and you replicate your actions. You learn that the strategy works, so you do it again, win more coins, get more confident, and level up one step at a time. You might try a move and fail, but you start that level over again. Choose a different strategy, and when you win, you get that fun feeling of victory. That's positive reinforcement at work. That feeling becomes a little addictive, mostly driven by the dopamine release in your brain, as I learned when I did all that reading on neuroscience. You suddenly find you're craving the chance to take another step and try a new level. And every time you try something new at work, an original idea, clearer communication, a more efficient process, you add value to those around you. Add value even in difficult environments. Although we all appreciate working with helpful colleagues, some companies have complex dynamics. If you're in a company that makes you feel like you shouldn't speak up and contribute solutions, here's my recommendation. Do it anyway, just do it in private. If you suspect that offering ideas to another department in a big meeting might make the other group leader feel trapped or resentful, take that person aside, talk to them one-on-one, offer your idea, and if they want to present that idea as their own, let them. You may have solved a problem, but you don't need company-wide credit. In time, you will contribute to various challenges, which means many people will see your value. In time, you'll become seen as someone who's there to help, not someone seeking praise. And when leaders have to determine who adds value, they're going to think of you. This is true in open, dynamic companies and in those more complicated and closed. What needs to differ is your approach and strategy to put this practice in place. Confidence leads to new opportunities. Whatever environment you're in, confidence can accompany you into new challenges. When you believe in yourself, you can apply that attitude to whatever situation is put on the table. You say no less often. For example, when someone asks if you want to lead a group investigating blockchain opportunities in traditional banking, you're more likely to jump at the chance. You're going to set yourself up to solve existing problems and experience new opportunities. When faced with a challenge, you're going to think, I can figure this out. You may not know if it'll take 30 seconds or several months, but you're confident you'll wrap your head around the problem and find a way to fix it. Without that confidence, you're more likely to see problems as too big or too complex. You won't instantly see the answers and you won't trust yourself to figure them out. For most people, that lack of confidence leads them to get defensive. They don't want to fail at a difficult task, so they don't let themselves get into it in the first place. They back away, hide, and say no to projects, so they protect themselves from failure. But believing in yourself creates a positive attitude which opens you up to new opportunities. Remember, if you don't do something, nothing changes. Building your confidence and starting to believe in yourself is a small step towards changing, improving the opportunities that come your way. You are worthy of those new opportunities. And when you're more confident, you'll feel more positive about those opportunities. That connection between confidence and positivity is what we'll explore next. Part number 3, positivity. Imagine this. There's a big promotion up for grabs at work, and rumor has it that someone in your department is going to get the gig. You'd love the job. It's the step up you've been looking for. The responsibilities would be challenging and the results rewarding. You cross your fingers and your toes and wait with bated breath to hear who's been chosen for the role. Then the news comes. It isn't you. As you sit at the same old desk, feeling sorry for yourself, you look back over the last few years in your current role. Did you do everything you could to get promoted? Or did you coast a bit, getting by with less than maximum effort, contributing what was needed but not much more? Perhaps you have to acknowledge that you didn't do everything possible to get promoted, and maybe your boss was justified in their decision to put someone else first. But that doesn't make you feel any better. You lost out on a more interesting, more rewarding job because you didn't go the extra mile. That's a depressing thing to imagine, right? What a way to start a chapter entitled Positivity. But before you close this book in disgust, let me share why I took you through this short imagination exercise, and it wasn't just to make you feel miserable. Studies show that our fear of loss is stronger than our desire for gain. Psychologists call this loss aversion, a term coined in 1979 by Daniel Kahneman, winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics, and his associate Amos Tversky, a cognitive and mathematical psychologist. In his 2011 best-selling book Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman defined loss aversion by saying, the response to losses is stronger than the response to corresponding gains. When we think about work, this means we're more motivated to avoid losing a promotion than we are by the thought of getting the promotion. It might sound like simple wordplay. What does it matter if we switch the perspective? But research shows it does matter, and its impact has been used extensively in marketing, finance, education, and other industries. If that example did not resonate with you, maybe because your goals are not work-driven, try the following exercise. Define a goal you want to achieve in 3 to 5 years. Make it a goal you really, really want, but one you will need to apply some effort to achieve. Then close your eyes and visualize yourself 5 years in the future, on the verge of achieving that goal, only it did not happen. You failed. Now let that feeling sink in and experience it truly. Once you've done that, open your eyes and list all the reasons you imagine you did not achieve that target. Include everything that could have contributed to your failure. That list is a guide. It's a reminder of things to avoid so that you can prevent that negative feeling 5 years from now. If you keep that list in mind, it will be a gift that motivates you moving forward. So returning to the initial example, let's frame this in the most motivating way. How do you avoid losing out on a promotion? The work starts by improving how people perceive you, as we've discussed. If people perceive you as difficult, they'll feel negative about you. You must break the cycle of negativity by being more positive, more engaging, and more helpful in solving problems. Confidence creates positivity. Positivity is about believing there is always a way to figure things out. Of course, there will be hurdles with every challenge, but when you have a positive attitude, you know you will find a way over or around those hurdles, but you can't truly hold that positive attitude if you don't trust yourself. If someone tells me to cook a turkey, well, I have no confidence I can do it, so I do not feel optimistic about the endeavor. Sure, I could try as long as no one had to eat it. I don't fancy giving my friends salmonella. However, if I watch some cooking shows, maybe find an easy-to-follow recipe for people who don't know how to use an oven, I might feel more confident, and that confidence will make me feel more positive about cooking, without poisoning anyone. There's a bit of a chicken and egg situation here. You could certainly argue that you need to feel positive before you can motivate yourself to take the actions that develop confidence. That said, I do think you need to believe in yourself before you can feel positive. You must trust you can solve problems and figure things out. And then you become more positive. Confidence is almost like a life hack. It's a cheat code in a video game that lets you shortcut your way to the next level. If you're working on confidence, as we talked about in the last chapter, you indirectly work on a positive attitude. If the idea of confidence feels too big, I want to encourage you to revisit the last chapter, read it through again and think smaller. Take tiny steps, experiment, just be open to the ideas. Then know that you don't have to have mastered confidence to become a more positive person. Confidence creates positivity, yes, but you can consciously work on being more positive no matter how confident you are or are not. You just need to be mindful of it. Imagine you've decided to have a more positive attitude at work by saying yes to more challenges. Yes, I can do that. Only you don't feel confident you really can do these new things. That makes saying yes kind of hard. If you did believe more in yourself, you might find you're saying yes more often without even realizing it. But when you don't have that confidence, it's saying yes must be a conscious choice. It might make you feel queasy and uncomfortable, but you can still deliberately do it. And I think you should, because a positive attitude both opens you to more opportunities and increases your chances of success in ever-growing circles. Besides, in cases like those, if you said yes to something and are now afraid you won't make it, don't be. You can ask other people for help, and guess what? Other people also prefer to help those they perceive as positive. That's good news. Positivity is contagious. Positivity is contagious in two ways. First, it multiplies within yourself. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Start small and let it grow to be an overwhelming part of your attitude. Second, it's contagious for those around you. When others see you being more upbeat and positive, they start feeling that energy too. They start believing in you and themselves. They begin to mirror your attitude. This is particularly true when you're in a leadership role, as people look to you to set the tone. This creates an opportunity to spread a positive attitude throughout your team. And if you're not a leader, well, there's no better time to start practicing for the role. It's important to note that the flip side is also true. Negativity is contagious, and it spreads even quicker than positivity. A negative attitude requires less work than a positive one, and since humans are all a little bit lazy, the path of least resistance spreads fastest. If you're always grumpy and believe people generally aren't worth bothering with, those people will stop talking to you. When you're forced to engage, they'll say no or be distant and unhelpful. They won't want to spend their energy on you. Then you've proven yourself right. They haven't got anything to offer, so you reinforce your original negativity about them, and it becomes even stronger. They won't help you, you won't help them, and it becomes a never-ending story. This plays out on a team level as well as person to person. When you have two leaders who are hostile towards each other, that attitude spreads to their teams. People follow the leader. Even if there are personal friendships between the two groups, the professional relationships can quickly deteriorate. With a little bit of action, though, we can take advantage of positivity's contagious nature. Bringing in collaborative leaders who work well together can turn the tide of a team as well as its individuals. It may take longer than spreading negativity, but positive attitudes do catch on. The more we think we can play nice with other teams, achieve our goals, hit targets, find solutions, and innovate, the more we can, and the more others can too. Positivity must be realistic. I'm not talking about unrealistic positivity, though. Saying we can do it doesn't magically make unachievable goals possible. You can't declare we're going to fly a plane to the moon next week and expect it to materialize just because you believed in it with all your might. In the best-selling book Multipliers, How the Best Leaders Make Everyone Smarter, author Liz Wiseman talks about this kind of extreme positivity. She says that unrealistic statements and goals like this make everything worse for you and even more so for your teams and those that work with you. In part, this is because when you say everything is easy, you devalue the continuous efforts of others and remove the challenges implied in moonshots. If you're extremely positive all the time, you start saying yes to things that clearly aren't achievable. Then when you don't reach the moon, your confidence gets knocked. You lose faith in yourself, and that can spiral downwards. So we're talking about a healthy, realistic dose of positivity here. How can you tell if you're realistically positive or absurdly positive? Unfortunately, there is no easy, absolute test. The answer will vary according to each person's capabilities, knowledge, and starting point. For me, it's absurdly unrealistic to say, I'll climb Mount Everest this year. The most I've ever climbed is a flight of stairs. For a well-established mountaineer, however, it might be realistic. But if you sit that mountaineer at a desk and ask her to write a thesis on how genetics affects body weight, well, it would be unrealistic to expect her to succeed. It's pretty easy to spot the absurd. Flying to the moon, climbing the world's tallest mountain, and writing hundreds of thousands of words in a thesis are absolutely unreal goals for most people. The trick is to avoid lumping every big goal into the category of absurd. We can often do more than we initially imagine. If we open our minds to possibility, unrealistic goals often come within reach. And we must open our minds to these big, but not totally absurd goals, or we get stuck doing simple, unimpressive, uninspiring stuff. When you can break a big goal into small, potentially achievable steps, you've found something that may push you beyond your comfort zone without being totally unrealistic. These small steps are critical. And let's say you want to run a marathon this year, but you've never done more than walk from the couch to the kitchen. You don't start by running 42 kilometers on your first attempt. At least I sure wouldn't. But you can break that distance goal into smaller steps. Maybe your first attempt is a single kilometer, then 2, 5, and so on. You increase your goals in increments. If a goal, any goal, can be broken into realistic increments, it's something you can pursue without risking the pitfalls of overly extreme positivity. You've reached the realm of unrealistic positivity when you start saying yes to anything without considering if there are achievable steps within the goal or if the goal could be feasible at all. You can't go on autopilot saying yes to requests and assuming you'll be okay, because feasibility is not a fixed element. The request might be easy enough, but if you've already said yes to 10 other projects, then taking on this 11th one will be unrealistic at this moment, not because it's unachievable, but because it's unachievable for you at this time. Like so much in life, this requires balance. You want to open yourself to new opportunities by being willing to take on new challenges, but not so much that you lose yourself in the process. It's almost like drinking. If you enjoy a social beverage, a few drinks can open you up to engage and socialize. You might even get up the nerve to ask out that special someone. But if you drink too much, you'll most likely make a fool of yourself, and there goes your chance of a date. Contagious positivity improves. Workplaces. When we become more positive more often, and those around us also have a more positive attitude, our work environments improve tremendously. You simply like going to work more. You enjoy being around your colleagues. You can have more fun, more engaging conversations, and more laughter. Work becomes a nicer place. Does that sound basic? It is. But don't we all prefer a more enjoyable environment in which to spend our working hours? A more positive workplace sets a better stage for people to relate to each other. You end up sharing more with your colleagues, both in professional stories and personal details. This greater involvement fosters deeper relationships, stronger bonds, and a sense of camaraderie. In turn, that creates a sense of safety. Work becomes somewhere we can be honest. When we're not playing office politics and watching our backs, we can put more energy towards accomplishing our goals. And who doesn't want that? This is how positivity drives professional success. A positive attitude is a helpful attitude. Let's break that down further. When you have a positive attitude and work in a contagiously positive environment, how do you connect that to professional success? Again, this will sound basic, but that's the beauty of it. You help. You help colleagues, team members, leaders, other departments, and anyone else you can. Being helpful isn't necessarily about solving everyone else's problems. Sometimes you won't have the time, skills, or technical understanding to solve a problem, and that's okay. You don't need to do other people's work for them. Instead, being helpful is about saying, "Listen, I feel positive we can do this. I'm willing to help you navigate the issue. Let's talk it through, exchange ideas, and explore what comes up." A helpful attitude is about being willing to get involved. Remember, nothing good comes from saying no to every opportunity. If you don't play the lottery, you'll never win. Contribute to the conversations in your workplace and maybe nothing good will happen. Or you might just win the lottery. Only in contributing is there the chance to solve a problem or coach someone to a solution. And why not? What do you have to lose by helping? 10, 15, or maybe 30 minutes? Yes, time is important, but I know I appreciate it when someone gives me 10 minutes of their time. Others will appreciate it too. This helpful attitude doesn't mean you become a pushover who puts everyone else's projects before your own. It's perfectly okay to say, "I would love to help, but I'm swamped right now." Even better, you could suggest a later time you could help, for example, after lunch once you've finished that big presentation. You could also refer them to another colleague who could help. When you can't contribute yourself, point them towards someone who can, and possibly even better than yourself, so you haven't just dismissed them. Even in saying no, you can demonstrate the right kind of attitude by making people feel that you care about and understand them. The key is to make saying no the exception, not the rule. When you're always too busy to help, people perceive you as someone who's never there for them. Yet if you're usually helpful, but one day you're overwhelmed, colleagues will turn around and give you their time. They'll want to reciprocate and help you in return. You don't have to wait to be asked. Being helpful goes further than saying yes when asked to contribute to a project. You often have the opportunity to be helpful without even being asked. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague delivered a presentation that was a bit subpar. They were missing some key details that you thought were important. There are a few ways to handle this. You can do nothing, but this means the group doesn't benefit from the opportunities you've spotted. You could point out the missing details right there in the meeting, which would mean criticizing your colleague's work in front of others, which is not great for your working relationship unless that is clearly the company's culture and style of providing immediate feedback. Or you could wrap your head around being helpful. After the meeting, you could go and talk to your colleague, or, if not possible, you can send a few comments on things you noticed, suggestions for strengthening the presentation, or even the specific missing details. Perhaps you forward them an interesting article on the subject which might add to their subject knowledge or a book recommendation. When delivered respectfully without showing anyone up in public, these little touches position you as a collaborative colleague rather than a critic or a naysayer. In these situations, you don't need to be asked to contribute. You can be proactively helpful. That's the kind of person I want to work with. Studies have also shown that we are unconsciously more willing to give something to a person who has given us something before, even if their gift was very simple. So you are not just helping, but also creating a good chance that those colleagues or friends will be more willing to reciprocate and help when you need it. And this is actually a very famous tool used by con artists, but that is not the goal here. You are not conning people into giving you something. The aim is just to create a positive, generous environment in which you continue to give and be positive, not just preparing to take in the future. Occasionally, someone won't be receptive to your input. If they feel insecure in their job or have a hard time taking feedback, they might not want to hear your ideas. If you sense that attitude from a colleague, ask before offering help. Hey, I noticed you're working on that project, and I think I might be able to help. Do you want to talk over some ideas? If they're open to the input, that's great, but if they close down, that's okay too. You offered help. You adapted your contribution to that person's receptivity, and that's all you can do. Don't push past other people's thresholds, as that will definitely not be seen as the right kind of attitude. Be perceptive of those indicators and stay within the limits you sense. Positivity is a superpower. In the famous French cartoon Asterix, the main characters are warriors defending their village against Roman occupation. While the rest of the area has fallen to the Empire, Asterix and his fellow villagers can fight the invaders because they have access to a magic potion that gives them superhuman strength. Asterix guzzles down the little bottle of elixir, and poof! He flashes bright, spins and sparks, and the weird wings on his head flap strong as his biceps flex. For hours he has the might to defeat the invading Romans before the magic wears off and he needs another drink. Confidence, as we discussed in the last chapter, is like that magical potion. If you can gulp down a few drops of confidence, it gives you superhuman powers of positivity. That yes attitude is incredibly powerful. It will instantly make you more helpful, productive, and even happy. A healthy, realistic dose of positivity will spread inside you, making it ever easier to enact, and it will spread throughout your environment, giving you stronger relationships with more positive colleagues. This isn't a once-and-done effort. You need to keep drinking the potion, keep experimenting with ways to grow your confidence, keep taking that dose of magic, and the contagious power of positivity will accumulate in yourself and your work. In Measuring the Impact of Major Life Events Upon Happiness by Dimitris Ballas and Danny Dorling, a job loss is ranked 5th in a long list of life events that negatively affect happiness. These authors found that people felt job loss was worse than health problems, financial worries, family relationship issues, challenges with education, problems in the workplace, and boredom caused by a lack of any important life events. From these and many more studies, we know the negative impact of being fired is up there with getting divorced, the death of a family member, and a personal health crisis. Then exact order of which is worse varies based on which study you reference, but across the board, research concludes that losing a job has a profound negative impact on well-being. I believe this is because getting fired feels like a comment on our personality. It suggests we are not good enough to be the person we claim to be. This idea, along with the research findings, makes unemployment appear hopeless, but remember, these are common circumstances, not definitive ones. When we understand that what we do is distinct from who we are, we can consider these elements separately. We can change what we do without losing our sense of who we are. That is incredibly reassuring. Of course, there are other complexities involved in losing a job, like social, economic, and family factors. But understanding this distinction puts you in a much better position to get back into the workforce with more confidence, and we know how important confidence is in achieving our goals. Even when change hasn't been forced upon us, it helps to understand the distinction between who we are and what we do. We can choose to change what we do even as we stay in the same job, We can develop, grow, and improve our skills. We can learn. This is a growth mindset. Ironically, it makes us less likely to be fired as we're adding more value to the company and better able to adapt if we are forced to change. Win-win, a growth mindset, takes work. Some people have a natural growth mindset and this comes easy to them. Others need to work on this concept. If it doesn't come naturally to you, start by acknowledging that despite the years you may have put into your company, the job is not who you are. You have the ability to do, learn, and discover other skills. Most of us have hobbies outside of work, which proves we can do more than one thing. I can prepare a fantastic financial budget and play a decent game of soccer. You can do multiple things too. Realize that it is possible to grow beyond your current comfort zone. Start learning new things, even if just for fun, and prove to yourself that you can do it. I know you can, as your brain, like mine and everyone else's, has neuroplasticity. Neuro means brain. Plasticity is the ability to permanently change, and research shows we all have neuroplasticity, even as adults. There are some fantastic videos referenced in the resources section of this book, which explain this phenomenon in more detail, but it's enough to know that neuroplasticity means we can forge new pathways for signals to flow inside our heads as we learn and relearn information. We have the physical ability, but we do not always have faith in our ability. Often, we simply don't believe we can do new things. Perhaps this is because, for some, this mental growth requires work. It doesn't come naturally for all, yet we can all do it. Remember House, the brilliant, sarcastic, caustic doctor who specializes in diagnosing weird and complicated medical conditions. He always believes his team will find a solution to his patients' symptoms. It might take weeks or even months, but he is sure his doctors will grow to meet the new challenge. When you have House's confidence, it impacts your attitude. Others will perceive you as someone who has faith in them and their abilities. They'll want to share their challenges with you as you make them feel they really can solve their problems. And that opens you to a lot of engagement with colleagues. In turn, those conversations expose you to new knowledge in areas outside of your own. It is also an important tool for yourself if you believe your skills can evolve and you can intake different knowledge on a variety of subjects. Then, when you try something new, the process of trying is one of learning, building confidence, and developing a future skill, developing the pathways and connections in your brain that I mentioned before. I find it strange that some people have a fixed mindset. I mean, if you believe skills are innate, we are either born with them or not, how can we learn to drive or speak a new language? We do it by practice, repetition, and building confidence that we can do it. Practice is a big component of this exercise, but the belief in yourself and that you can improve or change is always the starting point. This adds value and makes you valuable. Let's do another mental exercise. Imagine you're the chief financial officer of a big company. The finance team always speaks to you about their problems because they need your help and guidance. The head of marketing, however, never talks to you about his challenges. He just sees you as the numbers person. But if you have a confident, positive attitude and tend to be open, sharing your views on matters beyond just financial subjects, Mr. Marketing might get the feeling that you're a good person to bounce ideas around with. He comes to you and says, "Listen, I have this idea for marketing to a new audience. What do you think about it?" You want Mr. Marketing, or anyone else, to feel they can ask you these questions. As your contribution increases your value within the company, you start discussing ideas transversal to the company. A small contribution here, a discussion there, gives you a horizontal view across the business. You see the big picture without being deeply involved in all areas. This snowballs and gives you even more useful insights, as you can picture aspects that just can't be seen from an isolated little silo. You make yourself incredibly valuable. So what if it's not your job to do Mr. Marketing's work? I hate when someone says, "Sorry, I can't do that. It's not in my job description." Or, "That's not my department, I can't help." Someone who sits there and says, "This does not have a future in my team. If there is stuff to do, we do it. This is how my team adds value to our group and the wider company." We employ a growth mindset. We have confidence we can solve problems. We dig in and do the work. even if it's outside our comfort area. We're willing to grow beyond what we can already do. For myself, my team, and you, growing our skills and knowledge is incredibly valuable. It helps us contribute more to our work, play with challenges outside of work, like helping our kids with their coding homework, and be prepared for changes in work and in life. Yet work, in its current form or however it may change, isn't all about what we do. It's also about who we do it with. We work with others, even when we're alone in an office or working from home. We work with people who have their own emotions, experiences, and ideas. While we can use a growth mindset to broaden our technical skills, we can also use it to improve our personal connections. That's what we'll explore next as we discuss emotional intelligence. This is end of video. If you forget, subscribe. So don't forget subscribe for more videos.